This is The Quiet End, and tonight I'll tell you a story titled Eucharist of the Damned. Let's begin. The cathedral loomed like a corpse against the ashen sky, its spires crooked and broken as though claws of stone had raked them from above. Father Octavian dragged his tattered robes across the splintered pews, his fingers trembling, one hand clutching the rosary that now burned faintly against his cold skin. Once, his prayers filled this hollowed space. Now, silence greeted him, a silence broken only by the faint whisper of something unseen. His hollow eyes, pale and rimmed with shadow, fixed on the shattered altar ahead. There beneath the rubble, where a crucifix had fallen and split in two, he noticed it, a book, its edges charred but its cover intact. The grimoire seemed to pulse softly, as though it inhaled the gloom of the air around it. Octavian hesitated. The hunger gnawed at him again, an ache that had no cure. But something deeper than hunger stirred, a flicker of hope, a sliver of salvation. Could this truly be the answer? He knelt, his knees grinding against the shards of stained glass that littered the ground. As his fingers brushed the cover, a cold shiver ran through him, and the whispers grew louder. Words laced with venom clawed at his mind. Octavian, they hissed, voices neither male nor female, neither young nor old. You seek redemption, but redemption demands a sacrifice. Do you know the price? He recoiled for a moment, but his resolve hardened. He had fallen too far to turn back now. Yet, as he pried open the book, the ink on its pages shifted, as though the words were alive, writhing in protest. The title burned itself into his vision, Eucharist of the Damned. And there, etched beneath it, was a single phrase: to reclaim your soul, you must damn another. The grimoire's pages spoke of 3 sacred remnants, each more profane than the last. Father Octavian traced the instructions with a finger that trembled, not from fear, but from the hunger that gnawed perpetually at the hollow of his chest. There was no turning back now. The first ingredient was the blood of an innocent, untainted by the sins of the world. He found himself wandering the narrow alleyways of the forgotten town nearby, where shadows draped themselves over the streets like burial shrouds. It was there that he saw her, a child no older than 8, her cherubic face illuminated by the flicker of a lantern. She was humming a tune, her voice pure, unbroken by the world's cruelty. Octavian hesitated, his vampiric nature urging him forward even as his soul screamed in protest. But the hunger always won. The blood filled the vial that now hung at his side, still warm. He could feel its heat seeping through the glass, a cruel reminder of what he had taken. The second item came from the crypt of Saint Aurelian, his bones guarded by stone and prayer. To desecrate the resting place of a saint seemed unthinkable once, but Octavian had learned that damnation demanded the unthinkable. Grinding the bone into ash, the air filled with the scent of incense and rot, he felt his humanity crumble just a bit more. The third, a shard of moonlight. The grimoire's instructions were cryptic, but they led him to the cliffs overlooking the sea. There, beneath the full moon's harsh gaze, Octavian raised the black chalice he'd unearthed. The chalice drank the moonlight greedily, its dark surface shimmering with stolen light. As the chalice filled, Octavian heard it for the first time, a sound like laughter, distant, ethereal, but unmistakable. It came from no earthly throat, a laughter that unraveled something inside him. The grimoire's promise had drawn the attention of something vast, something that watched from the shadows between stars. Octavian tightened his grip on the chalice, his hands trembling. He was being observed, measured, but by whom or what? The cemetery stretched out before Father Octavian like a forgotten battlefield, its weathered headstones jutting from the earth like jagged teeth. The moon's pale light spilled across the graves, casting long, distorted shadows that seemed to dance with a will of their own. Octavian stood at the center of it all, the grimoire open on a crumbled stone pedestal, the black chalice perched beside it. In his hands, he held the vial of warm blood and the pouch of saintly ash. He whispered the incantation, the words clawing at his throat as though they were never meant to be spoken by mortal tongues. The air thickened, weighed down by an unseen force. The stench of rot seeped into his nostrils, mingling with the sharp tang of ozone. The earth beneath his feet felt alive, shifting slightly, as though it were breathing. As the chalice began to glow faintly, something stirred in the periphery of his vision. He turned sharply, the ash spilling slightly from his trembling fingers. Then he saw them. Their forms were faint, translucent, yet their faces were etched into his memory with cruel precision. The baker who had trusted him with his last confession, the young widow he had consoled with hollow words, the orphan whose innocence he had once sworn to protect. Their laughter began soft, barely audible, then swelled into a cacophony that made his knees buckle. It was laughter without mirth, hollow and jagged, filled with venom. They spoke no words, yet their very presence accused him. Their hollow eyes pierced through his facade, dragging sins long buried to the surface. "You think redemption is yours to claim?" the echoes seemed to say. "You were ours before you were his." Octavian clutched the chalice tightly, his knuckles white. The ritual wasn't just a plea, it was a reckoning. He felt the weight of every sin he had committed, every betrayal, pressing down on him like gravestones piled high. As their laughter faded into whispers, a single voice, deep and inhuman, broke through the silence. "Finish what you have begun, Octavian, or face eternity as you are." The ritual's momentum swelled, the chalice now brimming with an unearthly glow that pulsed like a heartbeat. Octavian's voice trembled as he recited the next verse, the grimoire's words searing his mind with their alien cadence. A sudden stillness overtook the cemetery, smothering the whispers and laughter. The air grew hot, heavy, and then the storm began. A golden fire ignited in the sky, spiraling down in a furious cyclone. Winds howled with shrieks so sharp they tore through the silence and sent gravestones toppling like dominoes. Octavian staggered, shielding his face as the fire touched earth and erupted into a blinding conflagration. In its core stood a being unlike any he had encountered, its form both divine and monstrous. The seraphim towered over him, its 6 wings spread wide, each feather sharp as a blade and glimmering with celestial light. Its eyes burned like twin suns, too bright to look upon yet impossible to ignore. Its voice thundered, shaking the ground beneath Octavian's feet. "You defile the order, wretched one. You tread where mortals and monsters alike are forbidden." Octavian fell to his knees, trembling, clutching the chalice like a lifeline. The seraphim's gaze pierced him, its light searing through his undead flesh, yet he did not turn away. "I seek redemption," he whispered hoarsely, his voice barely audible above the roaring storm. The seraphim's laughter was a terrible thing, sharper than the winds that tore through the cemetery. "Redemption? You, who have feasted upon the innocent, dare to invoke his mercy through forbidden rites? You understand nothing. Salvation cannot be stolen, it must be earned." It raised one wing, and the motion alone sent a wave of golden fire cascading toward Octavian, scorching the earth in its path. Octavian barely rolled away in time, the heat singing what remained of his tattered robes. He now understood that this being was more than an obstacle. It was a test, one he was not certain he could survive. The seraphim began to advance, its voice a revelation of fury. "I shall destroy you, and with you this blasphemous ritual." Octavian fled the cemetery, his feet pounding against the cobblestone streets slick with mist. The grimoire was pressed against his chest, its pages warm, as though it had absorbed the heat of the celestial inferno behind him. The seraphim's wrath followed like a tempest, the air vibrating with its fury. Reality warped with its presence. Walls wept dark stains, their bricks cracking and groaning like the ribs of a dying beast, while streetlights flickered before bursting in showers of sparks. The world around him twisted, becoming a maze of impossible geometry. Alleyways stretched and spiraled, their paths leading him in circles. But what truly unhinged Octavian were the visions. Each glistening wall, each shattered window, reflected his past. There was the orphan, her wide, trusting eyes staring at him as his fangs pierced her throat. Another turn revealed the widow, her face streaked with tears as he whispered hollow promises of comfort while plotting his betrayal. The baker, his lifeless body crumpled at the foot of the confessional, stared accusingly from a puddle of rain. Octavian stumbled, gasping as his sins surrounded him, suffocating. "Is this you?" The seraphim roared from above, its voice surrounding him, shaking the very air. "A creature so vile it cannot even face the fragments of its own deeds?" A street lamp twisted and bent into the shape of a cross, its iron groaning like a mourner's wail. Octavian ducked into a side alley, his chest heaving, though breath was no longer a necessity for him. For a fleeting moment he clutched the grimoire tighter. Its promise of salvation had once been a beacon in the darkness, but now it felt like a cruel trick, a lure dangled before a drowning man. Was the Eucharist even real? Or was it just another lie, another punishment crafted to break him anew? The whispers of the damned from the cemetery returned, faint but mocking. "You will never be free," they seemed to say. A sudden crash erupted behind him as the alley disintegrated into golden flame. The seraphim emerged, its wings folded like blades, its burning eyes a judgment Octavian could not escape. "There is no corner of existence where you can hide," it thundered. Octavian turned and ran again, deeper into the labyrinthine city. But with each step, he wondered if he was running from the seraphim or from the truth. Beneath the city's streets, Octavian found the chapel, a tomb of forgotten faith swallowed by darkness and decay. Its walls were damp, streaked with mold, and its pews, long abandoned, splintered beneath the weight of time. Crumbling statues of saints lined the walls, their faces eroded into expressions that seemed more mournful than holy. Octavian staggered to the altar, gripping the chalice and grimoire as though they were all that tethered him to existence. He spread the ash of the saint across the altar, its pale dust glowing faintly in the dim light of the chapel's lone, flickering candle. The vial of innocent blood followed, poured carefully into the chalice, which seemed to drink it greedily. The incantation was next, a series of guttural phrases that tore at Octavian's throat, pulling at something deeper than mere breath. As the final syllable left his lips, the chapel filled with a sickly, unnatural light. It oozed from the cracks in the walls, bathing the room in shades that seemed wrong, colors the human eye was never meant to perceive. Octavian gasped as the ritual exacted its price, a searing pain radiating from his chest. It wasn't just his blood that the Eucharist demanded, it was his essence, fragments of his soul, stripped away like flesh from bone. He collapsed against the altar, his vision swimming, his undead body trembling as though it might finally break. The grimoire's pages fluttered wildly despite the stillness of the air, as though mocking him. Above the sound of his ragged breaths, he heard it, the seraphim's voice. It was closer now, no longer a thunderous roar, but a cold, intimate whisper. "You cling to hope like the damned clutch their chains. Do you not see? There is no redemption awaiting you, Octavian, only torment, eternal and unyielding." The statues seemed to shift in the unnatural light, their hollowed faces contorted into expressions of judgment. Octavian tried to push the voice from his mind, yet its words burrowed deep, nesting alongside the doubt already festering in his heart. The chalice pulsed with the sickly glow, but it felt heavier now, its promise coated in unbearable weight. Redemption seemed farther than ever, and Octavian wondered if the ritual's price had already consumed the last of his hope. The seraphim descended into the chapel like a storm given form, its radiant presence igniting the crumbling space with celestial fury. The statues of saints shattered as its golden fire swept through the room, their fragments turning to ash before they hit the floor. Shadows writhed along the walls, twisting into grotesque shapes that seemed to mock Octavian's feeble resistance. The being's 6 wings spread wide, razor-like feathers glimmering with divine wrath. Octavian rose from the altar, his vampiric strength surging within him like venom pumped into dying veins. His hunger, his rage, his desperation, all converged into a single reckless thought: fight. He lunged at the seraphim, his movements faster than mortal eyes could follow. But his strike, a claw aimed at the being's radiant chest, drew nothing but sparks. The seraphim did not falter, did not even flinch. Instead, its gaze burned brighter, searing into Octavian's undead flesh. "You dare raise your hand against the divine?" the seraphim thundered, its voice reverberating with the sound of choirs and judgment. With a single sweep of its wing, Octavian was hurled across the room, crashing into what remained of the pews. Golden fire erupted where he landed, licking at his already scorched robes. He rose again, his body trembling, but his will unbroken. He charged once more, this time sinking his claws into the burned stone of the altar as he propelled himself upward. His fangs bared, his strike aimed at the seraphim's glowing throat, and yet it repelled him effortlessly. Its light flared, blinding him, while a deafening hymn of wrath drowned out his snarls. Every strike Octavian delivered was meaningless, his claws scraping against a form no mortal or immortal could harm. "This fight is not yours to win," the seraphim hissed, its voice now cold, sharp as the edge of a blade. "Your enemy is not me, it is the truth you cannot bear. You were damned the moment you fell, Octavian. This ritual is nothing but a fool's lie." Octavian froze, the words slicing through him deeper than the seraphim's light ever could. His breath, even though it was no longer needed, caught in his chest. He felt it then, the crushing weight of inevitability. This was not a battle against the seraphim. It was a battle against his own damnation, against the sins he could not erase, the choices he could not undo. The chapel burned around them, fire and shadow merging into a purgatory he could no longer escape. And there, in the center of it all, he faltered. Octavian, broken yet unyielding, dragged himself to the altar one final time. The chapel was a maelstrom of golden fire and writhing shadow, the grimoire's pages fluttering violently as though the book itself was desperate to escape what was about to unfold. His hands, trembling and charred, poured the last of the saintly ash into the chalice, where the blood of the innocent still churned with a sickly glow. The ritual demanded one final offering. Octavian closed his eyes, his hollow voice breaking the silence. "Take what remains of me." The air screamed. The chalice flared like a dying star, its light bending the very fabric of reality. Octavian convulsed as the ritual tore through him, stripping away his final vestiges of humanity, shredding his soul into fragments too small to name. The seraphim, watching from the edge of the storm, stepped forward, its blazing form dimming as if in hesitation. "Octavian, stop this madness. You do not understand what you summon." But it was too late. The transformation began. Octavian's body twisted, contorting in ways that defied natural law. His fangs elongated into jagged shards, his skin rippled with glowing veins that pulsed with an unholy light. Wings erupted from his back, blackened, skeletal mockeries of the seraphim's own, and his eyes burned with a light that was neither divine nor mortal. He was no longer vampire, no longer man. He was hunger incarnate. The seraphim stepped back, its eternal composure wavering. For the first time its voice carried fear. "You have become an abomination, a tear in the fabric of existence. You have defied his order, and now you will unmake all things." Octavian turned, his new form casting a shadow that seemed to stretch beyond the chapel, beyond the stars. The world around him began to unravel. Walls crumbled into nothingness. The sky cracked like brittle glass, and the very concept of time faltered. The seraphim raised its wings as if to strike, but the light of its divine fire was consumed, siphoned into the void that Octavian had become. In his final moment of clarity, Octavian whispered, his voice both triumphant and mournful, "I only wanted to be free." The seraphim's voice, now barely audible, carried one last lament before it too was consumed. "You were never bound, Octavian. You were only lost, forever." And then there was silence. Silence so absolute that even the concept of sound ceased to exist. The world folded into itself, devoured by the cosmic aberration born of Octavian's defiance, his hope twisted into the ultimate weapon against creation. Redemption was not his. It was never meant to be. Only the end. So tell me, dear listener, if redemption can twist the soul into something far worse, would you still dare to seek it? Subscribe for more chilling tales, and hit the bell to stay in the dark. See you at the next quiet end.